Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Lehun, for joining us in person.
Yeah.
Perhaps first time was in 2020 and last over a decade or so that we did not have a physical conference, Marine Money Conference here in Singapore. So it's nice to see you again in person. Last 2 years have been challenging. We've discussed that for many reasons, for the world at large, and probably for most of us here and our families. But shipping has remained extremely resilient, and in fact, an essential cog in keeping the supply chain globally ticking in these testing times. So we would love to hear your thoughts on actually what is Maritime Singapore and how has it facilitated this supply chain over the last couple of years in these times, and what are its priorities. That'll be a good start, I would guess.
Thank you, Abhishek. First of all, good afternoon to all of you. It's really very good to see familiar faces from all of you again. This is only my second physical event, actually, for the past 1.5 years. The first being the Singapore Maritime Week, where we gathered quite a number of our industry people. Second one, so really glad that you are able to pull it off for a physical event. And of course, welcome to Singapore to you for the past 2 years. Unfortunately, you come during a time where you can't really travel much in and out, but I think plans are on the way in the next few months. On Abhishek's question, really what Maritime Singapore is, I don't think I need to really go too much into it, but I just wanted to lay out a couple of plans here. One being Maritime Singapore is really about a global maritime, global hub port, where we are really looking at how to enhance connectivity all the time so that we can contribute to the global supply chain. More than 80% of the goods are transported by ship. If you look at the amount of goods that's transshipped in the Straits of Malacca and Singapore, that's a sizable amount, 1/3 as well. And in Singapore, more than 80% are transshipment goods. So we definitely realize that we play an important role in the play a critical role in terms of the global supply chain. And we are looking at the Tuas port, which we are developing. Yesterday, you would have read in the Straits Time on the front page how we are having the plans for the Tuas port that's coming up, 65 million TEUs. On top of that, we have plans to layer physical connectivity with digital connectivity, which we can talk more later. Of course, the second big strategy is really Maritime Singapore is about our International Maritime Centre. And for that, I would like to here on this platform, thank all our Maritime Singapore partners, our shipping companies, our maritime service providers, our marine service providers for having kept the Port of Singapore going, for providing the marine services that's important, as well as continuing to anchor yourself in Singapore. It's a difficult and tough time for the industry, for the governments around the world. We are working without any what we call in Singapore 10-year series to exam questions. We are managing along the way, having to balance between public health risks versus efficiency and port. And in Singapore, the trickier part is also maintaining our hub status. And we know that in Singapore, it is very important to be able to balance all three well and properly. So that's really what International Maritime Centre is about. And thirdly, I would say Maritime Singapore is actually about strategic partnerships. It's about our role in the International Maritime Organization as a member state. How do we continue to push through measures and standards at the international level? So that's, in a nutshell, what Maritime Singapore is about and what we see in terms of our roles at the different levels with our companies, with other governments in the international field, as well as in the global supply chain.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Pretty succinct and actually very credible. I mean, I completely echo your thoughts. Singapore has become the doorway to Asia for all the shipping companies. In fact, for probably over a decade, a lot of shipping companies have set up their offices here. But what I see, I mean, pretty recently, last couple of years, a lot of large North Asian players are also setting up offices here. In the same ecosystem, there are a lot of Western family offices who are looking at investing into shipping and logistics through Singapore. At the same point in time, there are large commodity trading houses and mining companies that have substantial operations with regards to both commercial and shipping side. And we also heard a colleague today from Vitol, so obviously on the trading side as well. So there is no doubt that even Standard Chartered actually relocated their global head of shipping finance position from 2019 from Hong Kong to Singapore. So no denying the fact, and completely agree with you with the importance of Singapore, which is there. So what I wanted to ask was, what is the secret sauce or the recipe or your main focus areas? How have you managed to not only attract these companies over the past decade, plus also increase them in the numbers in last couple of years? And more importantly, what is the plan to retain them? Because frankly, I mean, we all know there are some very competitive centers around the world, and it's in this particular time, in importance of supply chain being out for everybody, it's a critical competitive factor. So would love to hear your thoughts.
Thanks. So in a way, how I would see it is that, in a way, if you ask me, what is MPA preoccupied with? Perhaps that's the question. Of course, there's pre-COVID and post-COVID. When it comes to International Maritime Centre, we do have about 5,000 maritime establishments currently in Singapore with more than 160 shipping companies. And we do not take that for granted. We know that as a hub, not just Singapore as a maritime hub, but we also are a financial hub, commodity trading hub. And we know that it is important that we must continue to maintain that relationship with our companies. Of course, during peace period, it is actually something which we have set up teams to look into. The reason how we can have the companies entrenched here is actually not the work of just one or two individuals. It is the work of a lot of teams for the past years. And of course, many of you would know who Beng Tee is, who is very pivotal in actually coming out with the strategies, in anchoring queen bees, what we call here. And then we have the whole ecosystem that comes around with it. And that is important. However, when it comes to crisis situation, for example, during the pandemic over the past 2 years, we realized that it is also important to reach out to explain some of the policies at the national level. And I'm sure we are not the only country, because if you look at other countries at the national level, already during pandemic, you do have the health ministry, trade ministry, finance ministry because of budget. Then you have your shipping, maritime ministry, our Ministry of Transport ministry. So there's quite a number of agencies to actually manage within. And fortunately, I think I would say that within Singapore, it's still whole of government approach that we are trying to take. Secret recipe, no. Strategies, I would say it is really something about we are here, and I would really like to mention that to all our companies here, is that we are here to build a strategic partnership. We are here to build long-term partnership. And I'm sure for companies who've been here for some years, and I hope so that you having relocated recently as well, that you know that when we do things and we put in place measures, it is with a long-term view in mind. It is actually with the view of building strategic partnership. So in between, I would say like a tango dance, then maybe sometimes we step on each other's foot for various reasons, especially when there's no textbook answers. But at the end of it, what we want is to strike a chord such that we can dance, even when the music has stopped. And when we dance, the dance steps will be more perfect than what we have before the crisis. So I think these are some of the foundations and pieces which we are working on as principle in Singapore. And because of the importance we are putting in place for strategic partnership as well as long-term partnership measures that we have, our conversations with our companies is not just about now and today or the past. We are looking into the future. We've had very good conversations today for what I've heard, really in terms of digitalization, decarbonization. These are plans, that Singapore has. For example, working with our companies, working with international organizations moving forward. We can go into a little bit of details here because I know Lynn from GCMD, she has had a spill earlier just now. And we have Nitin from SSA, whom we are working very closely on the seafarer side of the house as well. And I mean companies here. So I would say, maybe not really secret recipe, but it is a very earnest approach to really build strategic and long-term partnership with our companies. And we hope that it is a friendship that we are building on, that will become stronger, whether it's crisis or not, that we actually are able to come together between unions, industry associations, and the regulator or the promoter, MPA per se, to be able to work things through. The beauty of Singapore is that for MPA, I think we are one of the few agencies in the world who actually marries both regulator and a promoter approach. So I would say that during the past 2 years, the whole team, my team has been very busy actually disputing and quarreling with each other, because you have the industry advocates and then you have the regulator approach. And on top of that, we are also sitting down with other ministries, talking about what's the next step forward. It is not easy, but I think it's the fine balance we have to strike. So we continue to hear feedback from our companies and see how we can fine tune along the way.
No, this is for all of us to see here. I guess what something probably Singapore has, or MPA as a promoter or a regulator has, is also an extreme foresight. I mean, I guess we common theme today that we have seen, and it was not to be missed in the conference, has been that of decarbonization. Most of the people here, including us, we've been in the forefront of it. It's here to stay. It's got longevity more than the pandemic that we see here, hopefully. So, I mean, we've been involved ourselves. You heard John Chen in the morning on the carbon trading platform, CIX. We signed in the same room and announced on April 2021 signing of Poseidon Principles. We also signed an expression of interest with MPA, GCMD, actually, to collaborate. So I think there are a lot of stakeholders, and the goal is common. I would like to hear more on the efforts, and I would take you on the priorities that you earlier alluded to, including digitalization. So with respect to both decarbonization and digitization, what are the specific efforts that MPA is taking, predominantly Singapore not being a manufacturing heavy country? So how can we achieve that? What are the efforts?
So in fact, when I joined MPA in 2018, and in the work plan that we have laid out for 3 years or 5 years, is really on 3 Ds: disruption, digitalization, and decarbonization. When we were on the topic of disruption, then a lot in our heads was about IMO 2020 transition. We thought the 1st Jan 2020 will be the most disruptive period for shipping. But alas, it is not. In fact, in Singapore, we were able to help transit quite smoothly, but it was the COVID. Let me go into digitalization. I will use the word ISP, not Internet Service Provider, but more for what I see as the directions moving forward. First, we need interoperability. We actually see shipping in Singapore, not just shipping or a transporter. It is a key component of the global supply chain, meaning therefore that there must be integration and interoperability with your logistics player. So if you look from that perspective, we need interoperability of the platforms, digital platforms, that is between your ship owners, your shippers, as well as your logistics players, as well as your shipping companies, shipping agents, shipping manager. I was once told there are 18 touch points across the entire global supply chain. If it is 18 touch points, the digitalization can only advance as fast as the weakest link, meaning that everyone needs to level up. And it is not just your big companies, it is your SMEs as well. So integration, interoperability is very important. In a way, for example, in Singapore, we have, with the private sector and public sector, we've come up with this SG Tradex, meaning to try to have that interoperable platform for data sharing. What MPA is trying to do is to have a digital port at SG system. We already put it in place during the last 2 years, which is to have a one-stop clearance for port. And we need to share that experience with other port authorities. So we have come up with a sort of a capability building scheme with IMO. Secondly, we are pushing towards SG Digital Ocean. It is what we call an open and common exchange and network platform where data can be harmonized and shared. And with that, we have linked up with associations, for example, like your DCSA, Digital Container Shipping Association, with with GTS, with your Cargo Smart, where we are looking at data sharing, we are looking at interoperable platforms, so that in a way, when there is a cargo clearance or when there is ship clearance, it is actually as seamless as it can go. So these are some specific initiatives we have: Digital Ocean, Digital Port, as well as SG Tradex that's being put in place. Of course, then, if you look at the second part, which is ISP. The second part, I would say, is really about sustainability. Along the whole digital supply chain, how do we make it green and efficient? And that's important because, in a way, although we only contribute to 3 to 5% of global emissions, it is important that we try to make the process more efficient. So, for example, just-in-time service. Before you come to Singapore, you will be able to already know and line up the marine service. I know today is a bit tough because you have to call up different marine service providers, right? Crew change, bulk, crew change supplies, and then you have your bunker tankers. So we are trying to integrate that into, again, an interoperable system such that you can already have that line up. So you know whether you can slow steam your ship before coming in or not. At the same time, we are working with other port authorities. So for example, China, whether we can do e-certificate exchange. So you don't have to have tons of documents on the table. So these are some areas. And of course, the last part is platforms. We are also moving towards e-bunkering, EBL. For example, we are one of the first countries to enact an Electronic Transaction Act. We do really want to encourage all companies to jump on the bandwagon of the digital platform. So that's on digitalization.
Fantastic. I am just trying to process it, and clearly not very good at digitizing in my mind. It was.
Okay, in short, I was having a conversation with a shipping company 2 days ago, and in short, I was asking him, because I was moderating a session, right? So he was asking me, I was asking them, what is the one sentence you would give in terms of ambition you want to see for the shipping sector, maritime sector in 10 years from now? He said paperless. Which is right. I have to admit that when I first joined the sector, I went on board the vessel and I saw the documents that has to be verified. It's heaps like that with certificates, and then I saw a fax machine on board the vessel. I'm like, cannot be. This has to change. So, and in the Port of Singapore, we are definitely moving towards a lot more automation. We are trying to gather, we have to get the data from the Maritime Data Hub, so we are trying to do data analytics as well. And we should share it also with the industry in terms of processing for efficiency. So AI, 5G, we have not made any announcement on that, but we are really actively looking at 5G seaward looking, so that in terms of whether you are doing regulatory sandbox for autonomous, at some point we are ready for it. So we are quite excited on the digitalization part of the house, and linking it up with other logistics player through a B2B platform like SG Tradex, or G2B platform, G2G platform. And we think if we layer all these together, there is a chance that the logistics sector and supply chain could be more efficient.
For sure, with this foresight and these initiatives, there is no surprise to any one of us, I guess, here, that Singapore has retained its place as the #1 maritime global center in the world for probably 8th year in a row. In a recent report, the Xinhua Baltic Index report, Singapore scored 97 points, which, being in Singapore, makes me think we are 3 points short.
Aye.
Which means that there is room for improvement, which means no pressure, but
we are working hard on that.
but there is one item that comes to my mind, being a banker, is the ship financing landscape in Singapore. I mean, there has been a retreat of banks in last decade and a half post the global financial crisis. Most of the well-known European banks have either exited shipping. Some of them have curtailed the operations. Some of them have gone back to their core markets, leaving a gap. And I was just wondering if MPA has any views on the evolving ship finance landscape.
So you are right. In a way, for the 3 points, we are very sore about it, and we are doing our best to try to fill the gap. In the midst of our pandemic, we are really looking at what more we can do. So again, I put it to ISP. The first, I think, if I learn from our marine, what we term now in MPA, marine tech, right? We started with a Peer 71 program where we look to industry for some of the challenge statement that they have. With real challenges out there, we went up to the startup companies and asked them for solutions. And we married them. And in between, financing was an issue, but startup companies, your VCs and your angels start coming in. So actually, after about 4 or 5 years of hard work, there is quite a vibrant, I would say, marine tech ecosystem. And of course, we're not stopping there. So when I look at the finance side of the house, you are right. I was asking for statistics from my team. Pre-2005, we had about 25, pre-2008, sorry, we have 25 banks with shipping services in Singapore, shipping desk. But today we have 20. So it is not too far off, 20 with shipping desks in Singapore, and of course we count Stanchart, and many of the banks are represented here, including Clifford as well, Clifford Capital. And we contribute still to 6 to 8% of global financing. So that's about 25 billion. How do we grow this, right? So first, I think, as I mentioned on the Peer 71 approach, I think we need a more integrated approach. Really is about how do we look at getting more connectors as well as intermediaries, and which we have as well over here, for example, like Transport Capital, who's here. How do we get more connectors and intermediaries to do that link up? We have companies who are in search of financing, and we have actually financiers out there. Question is, can we have a better ecosystem to link up? So the integration part, I think, is important. Then the second part, I would say, again, is sustainability, which is green. right? We've heard a lot about green financing here. From what Singapore is doing, we are trying to spearhead and give a nudge, put in place the relevant structure and approach. So GCMD is one. It was strong recommendations from our international advisory panel. And secondly, we've put in place the Maritime Singapore Green Future Fund as well. How do we provide some incentives to move for companies to move ahead? I think on the green side of the house, actually, I was talking to two local companies, much that we say about local companies who got burned during a few 10 years back. Actually, they are quite keen to jump on the bandwagon on green finance. But their challenge is perhaps not having that direct connection to the sector, especially to your medium and small cap companies, to look at what are some of the range of projects that need financing, and therefore I can actually bring in a whole group of financiers to pick and choose the projects that there are. So perhaps there's something and a role that we can play here from MPA. So that's the second part on the green financing part. I think there is quite a lot of scope there. What we need to help, perhaps not the real big companies because they are quite well equipped, is how can we help the small and medium cap size? Because in a way, they may not be able to get a good rate from the banks. Therefore, what are some of the alternative financing we can get from them? We are actively looking into potential like leasing, like private equity. We are talking to SGX. What more can we do to use the capital to raise capital in SGX? So these are some of the areas we are looking at, and definitely we do want to become a green ship finance hub, in line with what MES is doing in terms of a green finance hub in Singapore. So it's a hub in a hub type of concept. We are looking at MES. I think someone mentioned earlier on their the grant sustainability linked grant scheme. How do we work with them to actually give some sort of priority to the shipping side of the house? So that is on the S part. Then of course, on the last part is really partnership. We have actually some companies have approached us who's looking at perhaps not the ROI of 10 of double digit. I'm willing to accept a ROI of single digit. And this is fantastic news actually for our smaller and medium cap companies. So how do we give that nudge and work with them? Because of course they need crowdsourcing, they need funds sourcing as well. How do we work with them to give them a nudge? We do have an incentive scheme. We are actively reviewing into our maritime sector incentive scheme, which has a maritime leasing part, to see how we can work together to actually provide a bit more mechanism. So I would say is in Singapore we say it's akan datang, so it's a work in progress. Please be patient with us. But these are some of the plans ISP that I have. I haven't even discussed with my team, I have to admit that. I thought about it as I came into this session. So I will go back and share some of these areas, and they're also actively thinking about it. So I think and I more than appreciate any feedback that any one of you have here. And perhaps I think we can come together like decarbonization, which is a PPP partnership. We actually managed to raise 160 million for the Decap Center. Maybe we can do some sort of like crowdsourcing or crowdfunding together, especially since bulk and container is doing very well, to see whether we can do something to help nudge the process forward. So,
no,
yeah.
Completely agree with you. I mean, with all the right touch points with respect to a green ship financing powerhouse or a hub, being inclusive with the SME companies, we've heard a couple of times. I mean, Chinese leasing companies filled in the gap on the leasing side. JOLCO structures have been more popular nowadays. Then you see, Hong Kong also announcing some tax provisions to encourage leasing. So in terms of tools and structures, we are all there. And we've got a colleague from DNB Capital Markets also. I mean, if we could encourage along these themes, more fund flow, including capital markets. So SGX becomes an important cog. In the scheme of things, I'm pretty sure we will be able to, kind of go for those left 3 points.
That's helpful. I shall have a one-on-one coffee with you after this session to tap on your ideas.
with that, probably, I mean, I'm already getting indications of coming close to the time, but I don't think it will be complete if I move away without touching the human element in shipping, and especially in these times, COVID-19. Many of the seafarers have spent more than a year at sea. I'm an ex-seafarer. I can feel the pain, and I'm very passionate about it. So may I know what has MPA done with respects to the well-being, both physical and mental, for the seafarers?
Yeah, so this has been what the whole MPA team, I would say, especially on my operations side, have been preoccupied with for the entire pandemic. In fact, I know that for companies, it's actually a matter of pace and a matter of skill. Companies have given us feedback, can you do more, can you do this, right? Actually, when it comes to the crew, it was our first priority, because when I look at the when I reflect back on the past 2 years, what we have done, our first priority was actually crew. So we actually sat down with Singapore Shipping Association and the unions, and we put in place safe crew change procedures. Because we know that as a transit hub, there are things which we can do upstream in the country during the transit and moving them off. Scale in Singapore is actually very big. I must say, for a small country, we are handling quite a number of ships in our hub port, and we are handling quite a number of crew. And I am actually quite pleased to say that till today, say since March last year, we have facilitated more than 160,000 crew, ocean-going crew. Not our domestic harbour craft. If I look at the Singapore registered ship, we have more than 90% who are less than 10 months of their contract on board, because we keep in touch with the ship owners who are on SRS. And they have gone on board to more than a few thousand foreign ships who have left our port and going around. So I would say that it is tight. It is a safe crew change procedure, looking at minimizing public health risks as well as also safeguarding our crew. It can be tough, but I would say that if we are looking at the skill that we are doing in Singapore hub port, we have no choice. It's something we need to put in place. And I seek the company's patience on that, that if there is any issues, we can work with you on how to work on the procedures, so that you are assured of the crew going on board, and we are also assured that we have done our best for the crew. Then actually that was our first priority. So we got that quite in place already since May, June last year. Then, of course, along the way, pandemic strikes, and you know this virus is mutating all the time, right? If only it is a single strain, single virus, and we just keep 2 meters apart, that was just 2 meters 1 year ago, now it becomes 1 meter, we have to continue to fine-tune the process. Then, of course, next, we focus on our port workers and our onshore workers working on board the ship. So we went into vaccination, etc. I know you're looking at watch, so I'll keep short my reply. Then, okay, so then onshore workers, port workers, and then we continue to have to streamline our procedures for seafarers. Recently, we have announced CVAX, which is, again, we have to prioritize the seafarers. So we've actually worked with the foreign seafarers resident working in the port of waters. There's about 8,000 of them. We have vaccinated almost 80% of them. Next, we are moving on those who are on long-term stayers here, shipyards, etc. And also, like, for example, the fishery port, you know, the fishing vessels, so we are trying to look at the crew as well. We are working with Nitin's side very hard on crew sign-on, so that when you do a sign-on in Singapore, we can vaccinate you. There's still some work in progress, but I hope that we can give you good news soon. So this is generally it in terms of ops. Of course, operations in the port, we were one of the first to do contactless operations. How do we do remote teleconsulting? Try to minimize interaction between the crew so that you protect your crew and we protect our onshore workers as well. So these are just some of the measures. I can give you a full list, because every day we are having a dark team, you know, going through what we can improve, what we are not, and every day we receive feedback from the companies. But it's been, I would say, an intensive past 1.5 years. We've learned a lot, and we've actually reached out to many companies as well, and companies have been giving us feedback, and we truly appreciate that. For areas that we can push the boundary and work, we will. And we thank the companies for their patience. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you very much. I mean, we also, in our small capacity, we've, with a small number of members, have joined a special initiative with SSI to explore the human sides of crew and shipping. And there's a focused group committee looking at it to find the issues and address them. And this is a large gap in our industry, so it'll be good to sort it out together. I know we've come to the end of it. Thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I hope the audience did as well. And it was fascinating to listen to you. And like you said, it is a tango. It is probably one of the most well-rehearsed and well-choreographed tangos in shipping in the world. And may it continue to do so. And we will try our best to dance with you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thanks so much, Abhishek.